Welcome to the Inspire to Invest podcast, where we're sharing stories from real estate investors and how investing has changed their lives. This episode of Inspire to Invest has been brought to you by Control and Compound Financial. Hey everybody, welcome to the Inspire to Invest podcast. I have Sarah Miskelly here with me today. I promise she sounds way better than I do, so she'll do most of the talking. But before we dive in, I'll read a short bio so you can understand a little bit about her background. So she grew up in the world of real estate, managing investment properties from a young age with her property manager father. She entered real estate sales when she was 24 years old. She sold $55 million and earned the top agent under the age of 30 for 3 years in a row, while she built her portfolio in Canada, US, and Belize. I didn't know that about Belize, so that's really cool. And she also has 2 children, so she has shifted her focus to real estate full-time to give her flexibility with her family. And now she's focused on also helping ambitious women generate wealth by passively investing in real estate. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. And I was just joking with Serena before we hopped on that I was her on Monday because I got back from a financial freedom conference and it was like 4 days of chitty chatting. So it's all good. I hear you on the voice being gone.
So I know our bio kind of sums some of it up, but can you talk about what you were doing really before real estate? I know that's been like a big part of your career, but did you ever think you were going to be doing something different?
I went to university, so I'm very typical millennial. I went to university, got a useless bachelor's degree that I didn't use, and I didn't know what to do, quite frankly. I had this degree, I was confused, I was idealistic. I thought, hey, I want to get into, working at a charitable organization. Then I was like, well, they pay what, like 30, 40 grand a year.
Yeah.
So I was really kind of navigating that past educational landscape. And I ended up getting into experiential marketing, which is actually where I met Serena because she ran like a really big company that was highly successful in that space. So I dabbled in that here and there. And it was fun for a while. I kind of considered it fun employment. And at the same time, it wasn't getting me to feel fulfilled. And I had always been in that space of real estate growing up. And it just seemed natural to say, okay, like, let me get into the sales side of real estate. I already understand property management. And I think that was the best decision because it gave me a much broader perspective of the entire industry. And I was able to put together all the pieces and integrate everything really, really, really well.
Yeah. Now, what was the catalyst to move towards investing then? So you're working as a realtor, you're obviously busy. So then what was it that kind of redirected that path?
I had always seen the benefit of having assets. When I was a kid, my dad worked extremely hard and we also would get summers off and go to Croatia and lie on a beach. So it was that work hard, play hard lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I just kind of had the understanding that that wasn't normal for everyone. My mom, in contrast, they weren't together, but she would work in an office, like 9 to 5 every day. She had very set hours and weeks off in the, for vacation.
Yeah.
So there was that distinction available to me. And because I saw this, I started to take the initiative, to be honest. At some level, we have to take the initiative to self-educate. That is a huge component of it. And I had this pull to self-educate on what were the other options within the world of real estate, because I had that multifamily background. I now had the sales background. And I just started to explore private lending and syndications and many, many things. And I think I had as well I don't know why sometimes, but I said, hey, look, every paycheck I get, I should invest a portion. There was just a logic to it because I knew that when I was a realtor, I was working so freaking hard and I knew this wasn't sustainable long-term.
Yeah.
And I saw that there was another way to live.
Yeah.
There's just an inkling in a sense.
Yeah. So then what does your portfolio look like now? I know I mentioned it's like Canada, US, Belize, but what does that actually comprise of?
That's a good question because it is many things at this point. So I have hard assets. So I have actual multi-unit assets that have a number of tenants that live in the properties that I manage and take care of. So that's the very straightforward. I've had other assets as well that I've sold. So, a condominium, for example, that was a pre-construction deal. I've had assets like that. Private lending would look like when I'm acting as the bank and I'm loaning money to somebody else privately. So we have legal contracts and everything, but we're not going to a big institution to facilitate that.
Yeah.
So that is another component of it. And they'll give me cash flow from that deal, and then I'll get my money back at the end. I also have money invested in syndications. And what that means is I give my cash to a sponsorship team and they acquire large assets, so big apartment buildings that I would never be able to acquire on my own, and my money helps purchase that asset and I get the benefit of the cash flow and profits when that asset sells,
Yeah.
without having to go and manage 100+ apartment building.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's some resort real estate in Belize. There's also some private equity. I'm very diversified at this point,
Yeah.
and that has been a step-by-step process. Like, I don't want anybody thinking like, oh my gosh, she's doing so much. It was like piece by piece, step by step.
Yeah.
I learned, I met new people, and I built it up to have this larger portfolio.
Now, when you look at your whole portfolio, is there anything in particular that you look at as like something you're most proud of, or you feel like, it's the most successful investment that you've done so far?
That's a great question. I would say I am very proud of the hard assets, because that is something you can feel and touch. And I can see now when I've leveraged them, the value of that equity that's in the property. Meaning, when you purchase a property, the bank owns some of it, you own some of it as well. And over time, as the asset goes up in value, you have equity in that property.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a familial component too, because it was related to my dad. And I think there's the emotion that's connected to it, which, there's a lot of emotion in real estate, especially here in the residential space. So that would be one component. I also really love the syndications and the private lending, just because I feel like they're very innovative. And as we move into the way the world's going, less people are handy. People are more committed to their careers. They're more remote, even like we're moving down to Costa Rica in September. And the ability to have money passively invested in these deals where I'm getting the income and I'm not managing them, I think that model is the future.
Yeah. Well, you're only one person, right? There's only so much that you can do. And there are people with proven systems and things in place that, why would you struggle through it? Like, trying to figure it out on your own, right? Now, when you look back at some of the things that you've done, what are some of the challenges that you faced along the way?
I would say some of the challenges was my youth when I started. I was very naive. When I was 16 was when my dad passed away. And at that time, there's assets, there's liquidation, there's the politics of family, but I was left with some capital, and knowing where to go with that was very confronting. So I think the complexities of as well being a woman in the space. Look, I'm not one to sit here and be like, oh, it's so hard being a woman and all this. Like, I freaking love being a woman. I actually found, like, as a realtor, I crushed it. A lot of amazing women in that space. I never had anything going on about being a woman in real estate. I think that there is a missing, though, in the educational landscape of investing, where it seems very far off and out of reach for women. And there's this gap that needs bridge. And I had that firsthand experience of that gap being there. And it took a lot more to figure it out, right? Yeah. A lot more time and effort to understand that.
Yeah. Would you say that's the biggest obstacle that you've encountered so far? Or would there be something different?
I would say another obstacle is just managing deal flow and cash flow. And actually, when you're starting to create a life where you are making investing a part of your income, you have to manage, you have to be a bank, essentially. You have to be a financial advisor for yourself and start to put things in different places to ensure that you have liquidity and cash flow, because some of the deals don't pay out on time. And then you have to say, okay, well, if this doesn't pay out, where is my actual liquidity coming from to finance my lifestyle? So there's a lot of management pieces. And I think people have the misconception that, when you're investing at a high level, you're just rolling in dough every day. That's not necessarily it, because you also have business expenses, you have all this other stuff going on. It's amazing. I'm not here to say, oh, it's so terrible and so hard. There's just a level of management that does take time and effort and understanding and the nuances.
So obviously, like, we both do private lending, but for anyone out there that's not really familiar with it, what are some of the things that you do to protect yourself and protect what you're investing?
With private lending, from the outside looking in, I think people would think, oh, it's kind of sketchy, like that's private, you're going in parking lots with backpacks, there's like bad players involved. definitely not like that when you involve yourself with the right people.
Yeah.
So I would say the biggest part is the people that you're working with. It's the same
Yeah.
in the syndication space, which is just when people pool money together to buy apartment buildings. It really depends on who you're working with and making sure that they have a good track record, making sure that they're very open with you, very communicative, they're very responsive. And when I'm doing private lending deals, I just say weekly, I know you do them as well. I always need to have legal documentation that a lawyer reviews. You're going to get appraisals for the property to determine, not to determine to, but to show you the value of that asset.
Yeah.
I even had, when I was getting into this space, mortgage brokers that I trusted, they would take me to the physical asset. I would walk inside it. And that was very comforting for me at the beginning.
Yes.
So you are just making sure that you're, dotting all your I's, crossing all your T's. And a lot of that comes down to the paperwork and proving it and getting a few eyeballs on it to ensure that it's all a go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we're going to continue, but we're just going to have a quick word from our sponsors first, and we'll be right back.
Hey, Christina Wyatt here from Control and Compound. You might have heard the term infinite banking recently. It's getting more and more popular in the real estate community. Well, I've got Darren Mitchell here, the infinite banking guru, to tell you about it in 60 seconds.
So how does infinite banking work? Well, an infinite banking type policy is going to be high cash value. What that means is we're going to grow our cash value inside this insurance policy as fast as we can. This money is going to stay and compound tax-free for the rest of your life. But because you have that, you can leverage other money. The insurance company will loan you 90% of your cash value, but they'll loan you their money. Your money stays in the policy. Their money is automatically loaned to you. You put that money in real estate. You do some great real estate deals. You pay the loan back. You rinse and repeat. The whole time you're doing this, your money's growing completely tax-free, plus you're multiplying the money, plus you have a death benefit. When you hit retirement, what do? Now you start taking tax-free loans from the policy to top up your retirement income, an extra 50, 100 grand a year. That money, you don't pay that money back till death. Then there's a massive death benefit. The death benefit pays off the policy loans, and there's lots left over, tax-free death benefit to your family. That's infinite banking. And at Control and Compound, we are the experts at infinite banking for real estate investors. To learn more, go to controlandcompound.com.
Thanks again for following along with this episode of Inspired to Invest. In addition to real estate, investing, and running my own brand experience agency for 18 years, I also published a book called The Accidental Entrepreneur in October of 2021. This is my story, and it chronicles how I turned tragedy into triumph to embrace my destiny in entrepreneurship. If you're interested in picking up a copy, you can find the link at serenahomesrealtor.com, and you can also find my link tree with all of the retailers in the details below. Thanks again for your support. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Inspired to Invest podcast. I have Sarah Miskelly here talking about the portfolio that she's built out to basically service the lifestyle that she wants to live. We talked about your successes and your challenges. Now, what's the craziest thing that's ever happened to you as a real estate investor?
The craziest thing that's ever happened to me, I would say that it's just related to what I mentioned before, which is managing the income and the returns and investing in projects where it's supposed to go one way and then it goes another way. I think that to me has been very confronting at times when I'm trying to put all the pieces together.
Yeah.
So in terms of like a craziest story, I'm like trying to think of something like outlandish. But nothing like crazy really comes to mind. I think it's just being like, oh, shoot, like I got to get things lined up here.
Yeah.
And that can look like getting out and, putting in a bunch of work in one area to balance it out in another. I think that would to me be like kind of the thing that's crazy that you have to manage on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, agreed. I mean, I would say like up until now, it was more like people would pay out on time or actually early. And then you're like, well, I wasn't expecting this early because I wanted the interest. And then right now there's been some delays where people want to extend and stuff like that. So it's just knowing that you gotta, take both sides.
For sure.
Yeah. Now, I guess in terms of the best advice you've ever gotten, is there anything in particular that comes to mind?
I would say the best advice I've ever gotten is when you're building something out like this, you have to understand that it's going to take time and to not be so hard on yourself, and know that when you're confronted by challenges in a business or with growth, that confrontation, when you're dealing with it, that actually means you're moving forward and you're elevating. So I think, me personally, and I think a lot of people are similar within the entrepreneurial space, they're very hard on themselves and they said, I should be farther, faster.
Yeah.
I'm not doing good enough. That conversation goes on with me all the time. The experience, though, of sitting back and saying, look how far you've come, and actually realizing that the complexity that is occurring is because you're getting to a higher level. I find I have to reflect on that a lot, and it really helps me see, okay, like, we're going places here. I want to be farther because that's just how I am, and we're going places, and it's all good.
Now, as you're building, is there any particular financial freedom number that you have in mind, whether it's cash flow, number of doors, like value of your portfolio? What does that look like?
It's funny, I have a board right in my office and it says 15 million net worth by 40. That is just this goal, this trajectory that I have for myself. Yeah. I believe in money as the scoreboard. It's not really about the money. It's how I measure my growth and success as a person. I remember when I was a realtor, I had this exact same board, actually. It's the same one. And it said 400K by 30. And that was my big realtor goal. And when I was 24 and I wrote that, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, that ain't not. I did it. And I'm very much like a metric person. So that is kind of my big picture goal. And it is just, like I said, to see how far I can develop. I also have goals. I want to donate $1 million to God Behind Bars. It's a charity that for some reason just like spoke to my soul. They just bring in the gospel and stuff into prisons where people have no hope, and it gives them hope. And so that for me is also this benchmark of like, wow, I believe that I would have achieved success when I can donate $1 million to that charity. Yeah. So that's kind of how I think.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. There's someone else that I interviewed, and his mission is like, go big to give big, and basically allocating that money up front. So for example, multi-family, like $10 a door every month goes to charity. So you kind of create that from the outset. So it's always starting out, and then as you grow, it just multiplies.
Yes, exactly. That's what I do as well. And it feels so small right now, but same thing. I can't be hard on myself. Like I'm building those pieces up as I expand. I'm going to keep doing more. So it's exciting. It's kind of a game,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, for anyone else that's starting out, are there any pearls of wisdom, like something that you would pass along, like maybe you wish that you knew yourself when you're starting out?
I would say getting in contact with people more, networking more. I'm not naturally the most social person. I was very shy growing up. I can turn it on in a business setting. I'm very good at turning it on.
Yeah.
But I don't go out every night with friends. I come home, I have my kids, I have like 3 friends that I hang out with. Like, I'm very boring in a sense, happily boring. And I would say when you're starting out, it's really who you're meeting that's going to make the biggest difference. Like, if there's somebody that who's in the private lending space, and you are saying, hey, like, who are you investing with? Who are you working with? It really is nothing for them to share that with you. And I find most people in the real estate space are very sharing and open because it's not a competitive landscape.
Yeah.
There's so much for everyone. So I'd say when you're getting started, make sure that you're out there, you're making connections, whether that's on Instagram, on LinkedIn, in person, at meetups. That's going to get you farther faster. Like, I was at a conference, the Limitless conference on the weekend, and there's so many big names there, and you're able to just communicate with them and speak with them and ask those questions. And the list of opportunities and connections that I'm making this week are fantastic. And that's just because I put myself out there and had those conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I found that people have been so generous with their time as well, like in a surprising way sometimes. I think everyone really just wants to help, Now, is there anything in terms of motivation and inspiration? Obviously, the name of the podcast, Inspire to Invest. So what quotes motivate you?
Oh, wow. So I don't know if you've heard of Tim Grover. He wrote Relentless. So it's not so much a quote, but that book is just so amazing. It's so aggressive. It just is like, if you're an athlete, you are going to push it far and never stop. David Goggins as well is an amazing author, and he really gets people motivated and going. But I would say as well, it's on my board, my 2 actual quotes. So it's remarkable what you can build if you just don't stop. that for me really resonates right now. And the other one is if it's to be, it's up to me.
Yeah, I love that.
I think about those two all the time because
Yeah.
I just know that if anything is going to happen in this lifetime, I'm going to be the one to make it happen, obviously with connections. But at the end of the day, if I'm not getting up at 5 a.m. every day and getting to work, no matter what my circumstances are, then my circumstances aren't going to change.
Yeah.
So that's very much how I motivate myself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would feel the same way. Like no one's going to hand you anything, right? You got to make the contacts, put in the effort and take action.
Yeah.
Now, for anyone that wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to connect?
The best way to connect would be you can go to my website. So it's www.highleecapital.com. That's HYLEE. It's after my kids, Hypatia and Leo.
Nice.
And as well, I'm having a passive real estate wealth summit on September 21 and 22. The website is passiverealestatewealth.com. And that's going to be for female founders specifically to get into passive real estate investing opportunities and get the full spectrum educational process on just getting out your finances started to knowing the actual real deals that you can invest in. Because I think that's a big missing is where do you find these deals that seem kind of elusive?
Yeah.
So we're going to be sharing them.
No, I love that. I'll include that obviously below as well. And for anyone that's watching, make sure you've subscribed for future episodes and that you're following along at Inspire to Invest podcast on social. And remember, when you invest in yourself, the sky's the limit. Thanks for tuning in. And Sarah, thank you so much for being here today.
So happy to be here.
Thanks again to our sponsor, Control and Compound Financial, for bringing you this episode of Inspired to Invest. The views represented on this podcast are for general information only and does not constitute investment or other professional advice or an offering of securities. The host and guests featured on Inspired to Invest make no representations as to the performance of any particular investment. Should you decide to make an investment, you are responsible for conducting your own review and analysis. It is recommended that you obtain independent legal, accounting, and tax advice from licensed professionals.